In today's video, I wanted to continue with the House Telvanni questline featured in the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Last time, the adventure had just begun. I traveled to Sadrith Mora, met the mouths of the house, and embarked on a handful of quests. Each mouth represented one of the 5 counselors of the Telvanni. Each counselor has their own unique and eccentric personality. Some are standoffish, others are welcoming, and a few are confused. In any case, the quests ranged from simple fetches to somewhat complex dungeon crawls. They were more so meant to introduce the player to the main aspects of House Telvanni, magic and politics. For example, I collected muck and slowed soap. I also bought potions and delivered them to various NPCs. Then on the other hand, I delved into the Dwemer ruins of Qleft in search of schematics, and learned a thing or two about the Dwemer from a fellow Telvanni member. I'm excited to see what happens next on this journey through the Telvanni questline. As per usual, any excess information is brought to you by the game itself and the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages. Returning to the Telvanni Council House in Sadrith Mora, there was only one quest remaining. Speaking with Gallos Methendis, the mouth of Master Arian, he says that his patron wants one sample of Daedra Skin. According to Gallos, Daedra Skins can be harvested from recently slain Daedra. However, some alchemists and researchers might also have some for sale. When the sample has been procured, it can be delivered straight to Master Arian at his quarters in Tel Voss. So, I ended up learning the hard way. Daedra Skin isn't as easy to come by as Gallos said it would be. Or more specifically, the type of Daedra Skin that Arian is looking for is what's tricky to find. On the same island as Sadrith Mora, on the eastern side, there's a Daedric ruin. Paying it a visit, I went on a hunt for all of the Daedric spawns: Hunger, Scamps, Clanfear, etc. After recovering a sample of Scamp Skin, I thought surely this is what Master Arian wanted. So, traveling to Tel Voss, ascending the tower, and speaking with the councilman, he didn't give my Scamp Skin any recognition whatsoever. He just kept telling me to return when I had the Daedra Skin. As it would turn out, Daedra Skin is its own specific ingredient. This wasn't that shocking to find out though. I could just get back out there and hunt more Daedra, right? Well, according to the UESP, the only Daedra that will drop Daedra Skin is Mentana, the subject for Molag Bal's Daedra quest. No other Daedric enemy has this item for the taking, and really, the most efficient way of getting it is just by buying it from an alchemist. If you wanted to, 2 birds, 1 stone it, by all means, Molag Bal's quest is a good one to embark on. Otherwise, it's as simple as returning to Annis Saloth in Sadrith Mora, going to Brarani Ceres in Talaran, Garrus Saloth in Vivec, or Nalcaria of Whitehaven in Balmora. For lower level players, these samples can be quite expensive, so again, similar to all the other quests where you would have to purchase things, it might not be a bad idea to charm the seller. With the correct Daedra Skin in hand, I was finally able to hand it in to Master Arian. As a reward, the councilman hands me 300 septums. Furthermore, he goes on to explain that if prepared improperly, Daedra Skin can have a paralyzing effect. He then asks if I'd like to learn a paralysis spell. Telling him yes, a new illusion cast has been added to my arsenal. With that, thus ends the quest, Daedra Skin. It's at this point in the Telvanni questline where the Nerevarine can start to bounce around a little. Recalling to the Telvanni Council House, every single mouth says that they have no more chores for me. Each representative suggests that I speak with their sponsor, the counselors, directly. As it would turn out, almost every single council member has a job or two for me to do. So, the first one I started with was Master Naloth. This was simply because he was the most convenient NPC to get to. Tel Naga is located at the center of Sadrith Mora, and of course, the councilman resides at the top of the tower. Heading on in and speaking with Naloth, you can easily tell that he has short patience. His opening dialogue with me is, whatever you want, the answer is no. It's certainly an inspiring and motivating work environment. However, specifically asking about chores, he opens the dialogue up to an interesting task. Naloth says that he has interest in a certain article called the Robe of Drake's Pride. The current owner of said robe is apparently deemed unworthy in Naloth's eyes. Getting more information, the councilman says that the robe is currently in the possession of someone named Sinise Thindo. Thindo is a servant of Master Gothrin in Talaran. Naloth asks me to correct this injustice by securing the robe and delivering it back to him. It's funny, the councilman plays the age card and says that because she's only 200 years old, she's far less deserving of the robe than him. I can only imagine what Neloth thinks of my human character who's decked out in some of Tamriel's finest equipment. In fact, that's probably a conversation that shouldn't be brought up. From Sadrith Mora, Tel'aran is 2 boat rides away. Although that's quite odd considering it's just the next island over. For some reason, the game makes the player travel to Tel Mora first, which is way out of the way, and then to Tel'aran. In any case, arriving at the Telvanni settlement, I started to ask around for Drake's Pride. Everyone was able to confirm that Sinis Thindo was its current owner and that she resided in the tower's living quarters. Heading to that section of Tel'aran, I was able to find Gothrin's servant and ask about the robe. No matter her disposition, Thindo always said the same thing. She wears Drake's Pride and it's not for sale. When dead-end conversations like this happen, there's only one way to solve them. Believe it or not, there's no other means of retrieving the robe. You literally have to kill her in order to take it. Of course, casting Frenzy is the most efficient way of starting the fight, although the mouths did say that whoever wins a duel is deemed in the right. Thindo is a level 17 battle mage, and she knows a whole array of spells. Mid to lower level players might have some difficulty with this one. The best advice I can offer is to close the distance, avoid fire damage, and lay on the pressure. Thindo has a bunch of enchanted gear pieces on her. The steel flame scythe, a ring of ice storm, a ring of poison blooms, a 3rd barrier belt, and of course, the robe of Drake's Pride. This gown fortifies the wearer's intelligence for 10 points, adds a fire resistance of 25%, and adds reflect for 25% as well. It's certainly not a bad piece, and this time, I can't imagine why Neloth might want it. Returning to Tel Naga and handing it over to the councilman, he seemed pleased with my efforts, in a very Neloth type of way. As a very generous reward, the councilman gifted me with a whopping 10 drakes. That almost pays for the fare to travel via boat to Tel'aran. With that, thus ends the quest, Drake's Pride. For a lot of the counselors, they only have one quest for the player to embark on. While I'm sure they'll remain relevant to the story in other ways, I really only get to work with them for a short time. Either way, the next counselor I went to was Mistress Dratha in Tel Mora. As previously established, she's not too fond of my male character. In the end, it doesn't really matter though, as she'll still give me her respective quest. Speaking with the councilwoman, she opens with some comedic yet demeaning dialogue. She says, "What is this man doing here? Is it lost? Sticks and stones, am I right?" When asked about chores, similar to Neloth, she puts her unique personality to the side, if only for the time being, and gets into her quest. Apparently, Dratha is attempting to complete one of her collections. She needs to procure something called the Amulet of Flesh Made Whole. That sounds like a terrifying piece, but now my curiosity's piqued. Apparently, one of the Telvanni guards in Tel Naga has it. She doesn't know his name, but calls him a selfish little Bosmer. This will come into play for actually identifying him. Once I have the amulet, Dratha would like it delivered to her in exchange for a reward. Honestly, this quest operates pretty much the exact same as the last one. This time, I traveled to Sadrith Mora, entered Tel Naga, and began asking around about the amulet. Right off the bat, I'm told that someone named Berengaval has it, and that he could be found in the general quarters. Couple that with the fact that he's a Bosmer, and more or less, I should be able to locate him no problem. Berengaval could be found on the 2nd floor of the general quarters. Again, similar to Drake's Pride, there's no option for peace or negotiation. No matter his disposition, Berengaval just says, "What about it?" Literally, the only way I can obtain this peace is by killing off a member of my own guild. However, the mouths in the council hall told me that all was fair with just being the better fighter. I certainly don't feel good about it, as I know the council members are unjust here, but hey, I've got to rise through the ranks somehow. Berengaval is a level 16 archer and arguably an easier kill than Thindo. He has fewer resistances and he's a one-trick pony. As for the Amulet of Flesh Made Whole, because I know I was super curious on its effects, it does a lot of things. It restores health for 1 to 150 points on self, it cures poison, it cures common disease, it cures blight, and it restores agility, endurance, strength, and personality for 5 to 15 points each. Again, I can definitely understand why Dratha would want this. However, the ends did not really justify the means here, and I'm to blame. Either way, amulet in hand, I returned to Tel Mora and gave it over to the councilwoman. She seemed happy with my work and in exchange rewarded me with one of her old amulets. The amulet of spell absorption is fairly straightforward and a lot less powerful than Flesh Made Whole. It has spell absorption for 10 points for 5 seconds on self. With that, thus ends the quest, Flesh Made Whole. Now, from here, this next quest giver is a bit off the beaten path. For now, Mistress Thorana's chore comes at a later date, and Master Arian's questline is a whole separate can of worms. However, there is one NPC that I've interacted with who could use my help. Heading over to Nisus and entering Ordirniran, I sought out my old friend, Baladas Demnevanni. Speaking with him and asking for chores, he says that he has 3 simple tasks. The Telvanni wizard asks that I retrieve 3 books for him: Chuak's Fire and Faith, Antecedents of Dwemer Law, and Chronicles of Kuleft. Baladas believes that the former 2 can be found in Vivek's library, or they can be purchased from rare booksellers. As for Chronicles of Kuleft, he suggests returning to the Dwemer ruin and searching for it there. Now, according to the UESP, all 3 books can be purchased. There are booksellers all around Vardenfell who have 1 or 2 of these texts for sale. If you have the money, I'd argue that this is the most efficient way of procuring the items. It saves time and allows you to move on to the next quest sooner, as I'd say this isn't the most exciting task. If that's the case, then Jobasha at Jobasha's Rare Books has Antecedents and Chronicles for sale, while Darissa Darvel of Balmora has Chronicles and Fire and Faith. Be ready to fork over a little bit of gold though for all 3 texts. However, if you do want to make the most of Dwemer Books, you could venture back out to Kuleft and snag the Chronicles of Kuleft. If you want some stakes to your actions, you could undergo a heist to Vivek's secret library or the library of the Halamayan Monastery. At the end of the day, the choice is up to you. Personally, I ventured to Kuleft and then bought the other 2 books off of their respective sellers. A nice middle compromise. Either way, with all 3 texts in my inventory, I returned to Baladas and handed them over. As an expression of his gratitude, Demnevanni gifted me with some trinkets he no longer had need of. In fact, he rewards me with 4 enchanted pieces. The first is called Undussi's Key. It opens any lock that's leveled 50 and below. The next is the Amulet of Admonition. It paralyzes the target for 30 seconds and deals 1 to 2 points of frost damage for 30 seconds. The third piece is a second barrier belt. It grants the user with 10 points of shield for 30 seconds. Then, the fourth and final item is Shurfy. These pair of shoes fortify the wearer's acrobatics by 6 points. With that, thus ends the quest, Dwemer Books. Speaking with Baladas again, he notifies me that he doesn't have any further chores for my current level. While I'm leaving Ordirniran for now, I will be back here in less than 5 minutes. The next quest giver on my list is Master Arian of Tel Voss. As mentioned before, Arian's set of quests is more than some of Skyrim's questlines. I'll be reporting to him for the next little bit. Arian has always been the most agreeable council member. Even during the main questline, he's the Telvanni member who the Nerevarine goes to for a level-headed council. Speaking with the councilman and asking for chores, his first task is fairly simple. Arian believes that him and I can arrange a situation that'll be to our mutual benefit. He says that he'll become my patron and ally in the house if I'm able to convince Baladas Demnevanni to join the council. Arian believes that the 3 of us can regain some control of House Telvanni. If you recall Arian's messages to Dwemer, he thinks that its current elders, Gothrun and Naloth, are steering the faction toward its downfall. In response, Dwemer told Arian to seek out the help of Demnevanni, and I suppose this is him putting words into action. So, traveling back to Nisus, entering Ordirniran, and ascending the tower, I asked Baladas if he'd like to become a member of the council. As it would turn out, completing the last quest, Dwemer Books, really helped me out with this one. Baladas says that because I brought him his desired 3 texts, he'd consider Arian's offer of joining the council. An I scratch your back, you scratch mine sort of moment. Right after that, Demnevanni commits to joining the council for the next century or 2. It's still comedic to me how the Murr of the elderscrolls are able to just throw around their lives like that. What's 100 to 200 years for a powerful Telvanni wizard? Coupling with his enlistment, he also vows to sponsor a mouth and send them to Sadrith Mora. Having received the journal update, I recalled to tell Voss and informed Aryan of the good news. Keeping his word of the bargain, Aryan becomes my patron, promotes me to the rank of mouth, and rewards me with a silver staff of peace. This blunt weapon paralyzes my foes for 10 seconds on touch. With that, thus ends the quest, Baladas Demnevanni. Chatting with Master Aryan again, I asked him for my next set of chores. The councilman tells me that the local egg mine of Mudan-Mul has become infested with blight. Aryan would like for me to find the Kwama Queen and cure her of her affliction. In order to do this, he teaches me a powerful spell that's specifically meant to heal others of their blight. Furthermore, he gives me instructions on how to get to the egg mine. Now you see, I'm not always the brightest star in the sky when it comes to interpreting an NPC's dialogue. The councilman says that the mine is located west of Telvanni. Easy, done. However, he then says there's a shortcut if I head through the dungeon. Well, the only entrance I remember seeing for Telvanni's dungeon is out of town, just due west. Thinking this was going to lead me further out into the Grazelands region and wanting more adventure, I traveled through it. Of course, this did not lead me to the egg mine. It led me back into Telvanni, and along the way, I had to tackle various NPCs like Rats, Shulk, and Daedra. As it would turn out, that entrance to the dungeon was supposed to be the exit. The Mudan-Mul Egg Mine is literally right beside it, and in the end, I'd end up spending more time in this dungeon than the mine itself. That's what I call a barred Elder Scrolls experience. Now, in Mudan-Mul, the air has a thick red haze to it. I'd assume this is supposed to be a visual representation of the blight and illnesses that are running rampant in here. And honestly, I think it's a great touch. I'm always a sucker for environmental theatrics. Since all of the Kwama in here are infected, every single NPC, minus the Queen, is hostile. Workers, foragers, and warriors. However, taking them out is of course no problem at all, as for the most part, they're just nuisance creatures. Eventually, I made it to the back of the egg mine and landed at the Queen. A simple cast of Aryan's blight cure, and according to the journal, the Kwama Queen was back to normal. Easy peasy. With that matter taken care of, I was free to return to Master Aryan and informed him of my success. As a reward, and because he's my patron, the councilman thinks that he should teach me some lessons. He handed me a skill book for alteration called Breathing Water. It's definitely a handy gift. With that, thus ends the quest, Mudan-Mul Egg Mine. Speaking with Aryan again, I asked him for my next set of chores. The councilman said that he admires what I've accomplished so far. However, any student of his must know 3 rudimentary wizard spells. Curious on what those could be, Aryan said that I needed to get out there and learn Recall, a flying spell, and a spell of fire damage. Having already learned Recall, that one was a close case. Next, Levitate is one of the few spells that I actively rotate through, so that one's cleared as well. However, for the final spell, something that produces fire damage, Aryan suggests that I learn either Fireball, Greater Fireball, or Firestorm. As it stands, the only non-custom fire spell that I know of is Fire Bite, and just so it's out there, Aryan doesn't give custom spells the pass. So all I really had to do here was find a spell dealer who could sell me one of the 3 passable destruction spells. Really, most mages should have made use of Levitate and Mark/Recall by now. They're staples when it comes to late game gameplay. However, the Fireball spells are a little more niche, as technically, there are a plethora of destruction spells out there. What's more, there are a dozen different fire-related spells, but apparently only 3 of them will do for this segment. Now, there are Telvanni trainers and vendors who would absolutely teach them to me. I just didn't know who those were at the time. Because of that, I sought out some old contacts within the Mages Guild and browsed their wares. Now, due to my dealings with the Telvanni and everything I've done thus far, the Mages Guild doesn't really like me anymore. My disposition with every single member has dropped significantly. This led almost all members to refuse me their services. So, in order to take a look at their spellbooks, I had to temporarily charm my way into their good graces. After poking my nose into a couple of different NPCs, I finally landed at Himla at the Aldrun Hall. He had Greater Fire spell available for 86 gold, which in the grand scheme of things wasn't that bad of a deal. At least in the end, I actually get to keep and make use of this purchase. When ready, I recalled to Telvanni and informed Aryan of my newfound knowledge. The councilman told me that he was proud of my progress, and as a reward, he gifted me with another spellbook. War Magic, a text from the legendary Zurin Arctis, increases my destruction skill by 1 point. With that, thus ends the quest, Wizard Spells. Resuming my conversation with Arian, I asked him for my next assignment. This one would end up being a little different from the previous two. There was certainly more life to this quest, or technically, more death. The councilman told me that one of our fellow Telvanni members, Milan Farum, is being assaulted by House Hlaalu. Farum resides at a Velothi base known as Ordirniran. Arian would like for me to make haste and intercept the Hlaalu attackers. In terms of locations, he points out the Dwemer ruin of Kurdoms on my map and tells me to look for the tower just south of there. Now, it seems like the Telvanni politics are really starting to take shape. While not out of the picture completely, gone are the days of finding books and securing muck. Now, it's time to defend the honor of House Telvanni and show Redoran and Hlaalu that we mean business. From Telvas, I made my way to Tel Bernora, the southernmost Telvanni settlement, and then crept my way back up north towards Kurdoms. Landing on the same island as the Dwemer ruin, it didn't take long for me to find the entrance to the Velothi base. Venturing inside Ordirniran, I meandered some of its corridors and soon came across the Hlaalu agents. In total, there were only 3 Hlaalu-affiliated NPCs that I needed to take out. All 3 of them were thieves, allowing for quite the easy matchup. One is level 9, another is level 11, and the ringleader, technically the only NPC the Nerevarine needs to defeat, is level 15. Ramasa Althril is leading the attack on Ordirniran, and without her in the picture, I just now need to reach Farum in the upper tower. However, in order to get there, I had to take on various undead NPCs, a handful of skeletons, a couple of bone lords, and even a Daedroth. I wondered how these enemies were willingly guarding the halls and not going after Milan. Well, the answer was about to come up. Reaching the top chamber of Ordirniran, I located Farum, who was alive and safe. Chatting with him, he didn't seem all that fazed about the attackers or the undead. He simply asked if Ramasa Althril was dead and expressed joy at the confirmation. Milan said that he can continue on with his experiments and that since I helped him with the attacking Hlaalu, he'd share some secrets with me. Excited to hear them, the game unfortunately had other plans. While attempting to listen to what he had to say, he simply responded with, "It is so much happier here now that Ramasa Althril is dead. Now go away, I have work to do." At first, I was pretty confused. This wasn't much of a secret, and in fact, he didn't really tell me anything. It felt like I'd been locked out of an outcome. Well, as it would turn out, there is a bug that involves Farum skipping over his quest-ending dialogue. All he really says is that he's developed a new way to summon creatures and undead. Instead of needing a sample of their DNA, he's able to just use their likeness. A simple picture allows him to conjure undead, creatures, and Daedra. What's worse, he would have then gifted me 7 of Milan Farum's scrolls. These summon a Daedroth for 120 seconds. Well, what are you gonna do, right? It had been a bit since I had saved, and I thought, meh, who needs scrolls? Well, it gets even worse. Upon returning to Arian and telling him that I had rescued Milan, he simply acknowledges that Althril has been slain and says that next time, House Hlaalu will think twice before they attack Telvanni. The reward for this is an increase in disposition. However, as it would turn out, if the other outcome had successfully gone through, Arian would have gifted me with an illusion skill book, and he also would have handed me a silver staff of hunger. This blunt weapon would have soul trapped for 30 seconds on touch. Let this be a lesson. Always save before talking to NPCs. Furthermore, it might not be a bad idea to revert back a couple of quests in hopes of receiving the proper loot. In any case, thus ends the quest, Ordirniran. Chatting with the councilman again, this next chore has the option of being completed somewhat quickly. Apparently, since the last quest at Velothi Tower, and after duking it out with House Hlaalu, the Telvanni have come to some agreements with them. Arian doesn't say what specifically those are, but he does detail how the faction could use them to our advantage. The councilman would like to overturn the Mages Guild monopoly. When asked about it, Arian says that as of this moment, due to the armistice, the Mages Guild is the only faction that can teach spells and offer training to outsiders. So, Arian would like for me to speak with the counselors of House Redoran. I'm to convince 3 of their members to vote in favor of overturning the monopoly. If that goes through, then there will be enough support from the Grand Council. From there, either every faction can offer the same types of services, or none of them can. Arian's a little vague on the specifics. Either way, this leads me to Uldrun. Entering the Manor District, as per the request of the councilman, the first name on my list was Athen Serethi. Each faction has one representative who's more level-headed and agreeable than all the others. For the Telvanni, that's Arian. For the Ordirniran, that's Serethi. Athen would take some convincing to vote in favor of overturning the monopoly, though. With a low disposition, he says that he doesn't know me from a hole in the wall and can't be bothered with Telvanni matters. However, increasing his disposition up to 87, he has a change of heart. He now recognizes that the Mages Guild monopoly is unfair and vows to vote against it. Serethi then suggests that I bring this up with 2 other counselors, avoiding Bulvin Venom though, as he'd never give in. I should attempt an appeal to fairness, which essentially calls upon that ancient and proud Ordirniran honor. Even though the Ordirniran don't like the Telvanni all that much, they will honor Vvardenfell's customs and traditions. The next member I went to was Hlaren Ramarin. Same sort of deal, without a charm spell, there was nothing more to talk about. Without proving myself, he refuses to deal with me. Luckily, proving myself is as simple as a 3-second charm. This worked well to convince him, and from there, I just needed one more Ordirniran member. Picking a council member at random, I landed on Garissa Lethri. Wasting no time, I charmed him, got his approval to vote against the monopoly, and left it at that. With the 3 houses all thinking unanimously, that should be enough to open the floodgates or completely close them. Again, the details are hazy. Returning to Arian, he rewarded me with an enchanted glove called Arian's Dominator. Trust me, I was thinking the same thing. Hand sanitizer, tongs, gloves for the glove, no chances taken. Really though, the Dominator allows for the user to command creatures and humanoids up to level 15 for 120 seconds. With that, thus ends the quest, Mages Guild Monopoly. Having fully shafted the Mages Guild, I guess it was time to really throw all my eggs in Telvanni's proverbial basket. There are no more arcane-focused factions that would take me in, so I'm fully invested now. Asking Arian for my next set of chores, the Great House's complex relations continue. This time, it's House Ordirniran attacking one of our members. There's another Telvanni base in another Telvanni tower called Shishi. Shishi is located northwest of Margon, and the Telvanni contact is a wizard named Favis Andis. Apparently, several Ordirniran warriors have infiltrated the tower and are actively searching for Andis. My goal is to find and rescue him. If, however, I'm unable to locate Favis, Arian suggests that I turn my attention to a skull on his desk. Activating it will reveal some secret room, and there's a good chance that's where Andis is hiding out. So, this is one of the few overlapping quests that I actually remember. While playing through the House Ordirniran questline, the Nerevarine is actually on the other side of the hunt. You're actively searching for Favis in hopes of killing him. It's neat now that I get to experience it from the other side of the story. I get to protect Andis and eliminate his Ordirniran assailants in the process. As for Shishi, it's located in the middle of the Foyada that's just northwest of Margon. Going inside, I had to step over a handful of corpses. According to the UESP, these belong to both the Telvanni and Ordirniran. These are signs that a huge battle went down somewhat recently, and what remains further in is what the Nerevarine has to deal with. In total, there are only 3 Ordirniran warriors left alive. One of them, Temis Ramavel, is level 9 and relatively easy to deal with. The other 2 though, Anis Ramaran and Brarama Salis, are level 17. Even for my character who's kind of overpowered, they gave me a run for my money. They fight with enchanted blades, and due to their complete armor sets, they take more than a few hits to take out. It's best to come prepared with potions and possibly a means of ranged attacks. Some swift and powerful destruction spells ought to do the job nicely. Either way, when the coast was clear, I ascended to the top level of the tower. There are a couple more corpses here, but luckily, none of them belong to Andis. Obviously, having done this quest before, just on the other side of history, I knew that Favis was indeed alive in the secret room. Activating the skull and descending the trapdoor, the conversation was fairly similar to the one with Farum in Ordirniran. Andis had asked if the ringleader, Brarama Salis, was dead. After receiving that confirmation, he said that he could handle the remaining Ordirniran on his own, meaning you technically don't have to kill the other 2 warriors if you don't feel like it. Now, Unlike my interaction with Farum, Favis actually gives me a reward. He hands me 2 skill books, the Lunar Lorcan and a Hypothetical Treachery. The latter is for destruction, while the former is for alteration. With the job taken care of, I returned to Arian and reported my success. The councilman had similar dialogue to when the Halalu conflict got resolved, that maybe next time, Ordirniran will think twice before messing with the Telvanni. He ends up with saying some pretty wise words, that Vvardenfell has plenty of room for all of the great houses, and there's no need to fight over land. Well said, Arian. For further reward, the councilman hands me a Silver Staff of War. So much for peace, I guess. The staff deals 5 to 11 points of fire, frost, and shock damage per strike. With that, thus ends the quest, Shishi. The action with House Telvanni is only picking up. Gone are the days of simple fetches and asking about theories on the Dwemer. Now I'm working directly with some of the council members while plotting against others. I'm protecting my fellow guildmates by slaying agents of the other houses and thwarting their plans. I've overturned a massive monopoly for the Mages Guild, allowing for an even playing field. Lots of pieces are moving for the Telvanni right now. However, where they'll go, what they'll end up doing, and who gets hurt in the process is anyone's guess.